Okay, so what we have here is Axis Camera Companion, and what we're showing is two cameras, a small Axis PTZ camera, the M50, and a small fixed camera, the P13. The setup is as follows. The cameras are already plugged in and cabled to a network switch. Underneath the desk here we have a PC. But it's important to understand that with this solution, once we're done doing the initial setup, we don't need this PC anymore because all recording is now actually occurring on the product themselves. So the purpose is that an installer shows up on the laptop, configures the solution, closes it, and then walks away. The cameras will then continue run and record on their SD cards, which are inside the cards, and the only time you need the application again is when you want to retrieve video. Okay, so to make it easy for this particular installation, we're using a micro SD card, which I've already inserted for you.
Okay.
But I'll have you snap that camera in place after you put the little lid on. There we go. And there we go. We can leave it like that. That's good. It might take just a little bit of pressure, but since they took it off, we'll leave it like that. All right. So moving on to this camera, we already have an SD card here. So essentially, you just close the trunk and you aim and point the camera in the direction you're interested. Now we're going to create a new site. So assume this is a new installation. You've just installed these cameras. So we're going to click on Create a New Site down in the bottom corner. Okay. The application launch into the setup process. This setup process you should only see once. Okay, this is the very first time that you set up the site. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the process at which we're going to go through while we set this up. We also have a help icon up in the corner. And what's interesting about the help is that we made it context sensitive. So if you click on the help icon real quick, you'll see that the help file opens up and it takes us directly to the portion of this where we're at in the software. So if you're in the recording piece of it, it'll have recording instructions. If you are in the live view, it'll talk about live view pieces. So very easy, you don't have to search the index. So let's go ahead and close that out. So the first thing we're asked is to create a site. So let's go ahead and name this site.
Okay.
Okay.
Oop,
Okay, so I see West Axis. We also want protection, password protection and security on this platform. So we, by default, instruct the user to set a password, okay? For demonstration purposes and making it easy, we're just gonna uncheck the password, but really that should not be the best practice in this case.
Okay.
As soon as you click next, we're gonna go to step number 2, and that is basically a quick series of pictures that gives you the basic instructions to make sure you have plugged in the camera, make sure you have inserted the SD card, and that everything is up and running, okay? And the green light that you see represented here actually flashed the very first time the camera came fully online. The light was on for about 15 seconds, okay? So you can click next. Okay, now we're adding the camera. So now we're going out over this little network and we're searching for the cameras, which should discover here shortly. We'll give it a few moments. And if you want to manually add cameras, you can do so by entering in IP addresses. If you have statically assigned IP addresses, looks like the other demonstration group set a password on these cameras. What was the password? Password was password. Okay. So what we can do in this case is we can go back here and we can actually enter in the password.
So as long as the cameras are already used and a password set, you have to use the same password, even if you're setting up a new site?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. But you would never usually set up in a new site for a site that you've already configured in the very first time.
Okay.
So go ahead and click next, and then next again, because we've already gone through these steps. And there, immediately now that we had the password, this would have done. So the application assumed that this was a fresh install, so it used the Axis factory default password. So of course it could not connect to the cameras. But now that we know that the last group had already set a password, it immediately connected. So in this discovery, we get a quick thumbnail and a quick screenshot of what the camera sees. And here you can actually name the cameras. By default, it's the serial number of the product, but you can click right into that field and you can choose a different name.
So I can do front and then
So we got the front.
upper or whatever it would be. Okay.
And we got upper. So 2 cameras have been added to this particular site, and now we can click next. Now the camera actually goes to a step of setting up the storage, okay? So in this particular case, we know we have SD cards, so nothing is changing with the products. The SD cards are already inserted into these cameras. If for any reason the cameras would not detect SD storage, we actually have a discovery protocol in here that goes out and finds a NAS device, a network share. So if you buy a common off-the-shelf small little NAS device, a Soho small office, home office device, the cameras will give you an option to record down to that device. Of course, to keep the solution simple, we're going to be talking a lot about SD cards in these particular products, but if you were to buy an Axis product that does not have an SD card, then you know you can confidently go buy a NAS device, plug it into the same network, and then it will give you an option. Okay? So now everything is set. We have the site that we name. It says that it's password protected. It says remember to store the password and write that down. And then, of course, the storage, there's no changes because it's already been configured. So we're going to go ahead and click finish. Now, the cameras are being brought into the application and then they're being programmed from the PC to operate in the conditions that you just requested. And that by default is a motion detection recording at a 720p resolution with 15 frames per second. That's the default out of the box. Once we're at this stage, literally you can now unplug the PC or laptop and walk away. You do not need to use the platform of a PC with its hard disks to record anymore. You're really done. And the design here, the purpose is for the installer to really shut his laptop and leave the site and say, we're done with the installation, okay? But we have a few things we need to tweak. First off, I'm upside down in this particular image. So if we look at the layout of the screen, what we have is we have 3 icons up on top. They are live view, recording, and settings, okay? In the bottom corner, we have an option to take a quick snapshot of what we see, if you're doing an investigation, for instance, or we can go to a grid layout of cameras without the actual interface. And consistent throughout all the screens is, again, our context-sensitive help file, okay? The arrows on the bottom helps you navigate if you have multiple cameras. You can actually even adjust the size here of the image by sliding these bars up and down, but you can also directly click in the images to move from camera to camera. So let's do the first things first. Let's rotate this image. So if you go to the settings up on top, okay, the camera takes a quick snapshot of what it saw. It also gives you a few summary pieces. So we know this is the front camera that we need to rotate. And up on top, we have some icons. So let's click the rotate clockwise. We click it one time, and it's going to take a snapshot to give you a reference image. But we don't want that, that's sideways, so we want to go one more rotation. Okay, and then you go click back on live view, and let's see how the video looks. And hopefully not here, and it is looking here. So now we've rotated the image and everything essentially is in position, right? There's a few more things that we can do on the settings screen. Let's go ahead and click on the settings one more time. So what we can do here is we can delete cameras and we can add cameras. We can also refresh the view in case we make changes. We can rotate the product and we can add a text field on the very top. So if you want to have included in your video a text field that matches the camera name, you can do that. If you want to show date and time, you can do that, okay? We also have some basic information here. We have the name of the camera. Everything is okay, it's online. We have some check boxes here for motion detection. And we have an empty checkbox for continuous because we have not set this camera for continuous recording. It also tells you where the storage is. So when it comes to recording, we have options. We can either have motion recording only, we can have continuous recording only, or we can do both. We can have a continuous recording at a very low frame rate, at a very low resolution, while bumping up the resolution and frame rate on motion within the camera, okay? We can also change things. The little pen here is an edit pen, so if you want to change the name of the camera, or for instance, tell the products, and I'm going to navigate real quick for you by clicking on storage. If we want to tell the media to only store for 7 days or 5 days, in case you only want that much, You can set a rewrite cycle on the card that follows your security strategy, or you can simply leave it at max, okay? And to calculate the storage, you can do on the Axis webpage by using our design tool. It's just like calculating for a larger system. You simply pick the camera, what frame rate you want to use, what resolution you want to use, what compression you want to use, and we'll give you a storage estimate. By default, you're going to get, with the 720p and 15 frames per second, and a 32 gigabyte SD card, you're going to get about 1 to 2 days of storage on the card per gigabyte. So you get almost 30 days of video on an SD card if you leave it at the default settings. Of course, depending on how much motion there is in that particular image. So this is really the configuration page. What we can also do here is change the site name if we want to change it to something different. We can change the password, remove the password, and here's a beautiful thing. We can export the entire configuration once we're done and bring that to another workstation. So if you have 2 workstations in the office that both need access to this video, you can set it up on one. And again, remember, you don't need that workstation to record, but to view it, you're going to need it. You can then take that file you just exported, bring it to the next workstation, launch Camera Companion, and in the very beginning, when you clicked Create New Site, there's another little link that says Import Site. You can simply import the site, and it carries over all the settings into another instance of the installation. Okay? We can also go to Internet Configuration. Here, you can check the cameras that you want to access from the internet, and what we will use is we will use UPnP protocol to connect from the initial setup here to a router like a Linksys, Netgear, Belkin, it doesn't matter, and we will configure it for an automatic port forward. Now, this sounds all complicated, UPnP, port forward, automatic this, automatic that. Once it's all done, again, you can save and export that file, take it to your home, install it, and you can now connect remotely. Okay? So again, it's not that you should know all these network terms and terminologies. You should simply click, our app goes and tells the router what to do. You save the file and you import it at home, and you have access now to your video remotely. Okay? And then we can customize some things. We can say, when we're in live view, what resolution and what frame rate would we like in live view? When we take a snapshot or when we record, where would we like those files to be saved on the device or PC? And this application is both available on PC, on iPhone, on iPad, as well as Android. So if you want to have mobility within your facility and you have a wireless access point, you can actually carry a tablet and see all this video as you're moving through the site. The last piece is a recording interface. It looks very much like the live view interface, with the cameras on the bottom, the main camera that you're observing on the very top, and you have a timeline on the bottom. The red indicates that we have motion. We have a motion recording. If you had configured for also continuous recording, that would have shown up in blue. Okay? We have simple VCR controls to move around within the video, and we also have a calendar to move back in time and move forward in time to search for video. We can zoom in, and we can also zoom out on the timeline if we want to go into details and see more or less of the events. As you can see, some of the events are rather small because they're very small motion events, okay? So you can use just the forward button here and skip around between the different events. If we click on this camera down here, for instance, and click on next, it's going to immediately hop to those events, okay? And it's going to play back that particular video. So also down here we have a little disc that indicates that you can save the video, and then we have an investigator tool. So I'm going to go in here where there's quite a bit of motion from earlier this morning.
Yeah, or if you have one of those touch pads, you can put your fingers on it. Yeah.
And then we can go to the investigator pane. What the investigator pane does is gives you frames. It allows you to jump a few frames back and a few frames forward so that you can take a screenshot of the particular video. So now it's loading from the SD card on the camera. And here we say we can go back 1 frame, 5, 15, or 30, or we can go forward 1 frame, 5, 15, or 30 right here. And this is the timeline in which we're looking at video. You can see there are small changes to the video in the frame rate. And then we can take a snapshot and export that. So it's a little bit of a entry-level investigative tool for this type of application. And when you find something interesting and you want to export it, you click Save, and then we give you an option. You can trim this timeline to say, I only want video for these minutes or this long. And then you click the little disc here, and then you export the clip. So let's take a short clip, make it very small, and we'll save it. We're now saving it to the hard disk. So now, this is when we need a PC. We need a PC during setup, and we need a PC during playback. But as this system sits and records day in and day out, none of this technology is needed. So it's exporting, and it's going to take us a little bit because I picked a larger timeline. One key element for us when it comes to the recordings is that when law enforcement has to view this video, or an external investigator has to view this video, they don't always have permission to install a player or another program to play back video. Because you can imagine if you're a law enforcement officer with your laptop and you go to 7-Eleven, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, they all have different systems. So now this laptop from the police officer essentially has to have multiple applications. The way we overcame that is by having a non-installed self-executable player on every export, which means that even though the file format we have is an open file format for Windows Media Player, he can, if he wants, simply drag the video file onto the player and it would automatically play on any laptop without requiring an installation, which may be against security policies for the police department or investigator. So as this is finishing up, you'll see the folder will open up, and in the folder you will see the self-executable. So that'll be just a moment. Here we have the file that we exported, and here we have the Axis player. And it's as simple as taking this and dragging it onto the player, and then a separate player. You have to agree to a little license agreement because Axis already took care of all the licensing for you. And you get into a very basic player for that video clip. So this is now the exported clip, and whoever took it for investigation purposes does not need to install anything on their machine to play it back.